Okay, welcome back to the Marketing Schematic. Today we are welcoming Justin Kerley back to the show. So if you're new here or new to Top Floor, Justin is Chad's partner in business at Top Floor, and someone that I really think of as an expert in data analysis and strategy for our clients, which kind of brings us to the topic for today's episode, which is how to assess the value of digital marketing efforts that you're putting in, kind of what information we like to know when we're working with our clients to kind of evaluate our success and performance, and then just how that data can then be applied to your overall strategy. So all that said, welcome back, Justin. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
As if you had a choice.
Yeah, exactly. But I know that you're enthusiastic about it.
I'm so enthusiastic.
Since you've already been on the show, we've already asked you our standard icebreaker question, but we have a new one for you today. Actually, I haven't told Chad this, but just keeping you on your toes. So given that, I can only speak for myself, but I, growing up, did not think that I was going to be a marketer one day, because I don't even think I knew that that was a thing. Or
they don't cover that in kindergarten.
They don't, they really don't. So my question for you is, and we can all answer it too, but you can start, Justin, is what did you want to be when you grew up?
Ooh, good one.
Oh boy. Well, just piggyback on your point about not wanting to be a marketer. I didn't even know this world that I currently existed at all until I was like 25. So
once you spent all the money on college.
Yeah, exactly. What do I want to be when I grow up? Probably, this is going to be a little cliche, but I wanted to be in the NBA so bad. And as like the tallest person in my little town, city of Mequon, but tallest guy there, I was like, oh, I got a shot. And then I played against people from other cities and realized, boy, I do not have a shot. So that was a little crushing. But that was like the dream for sure. I even embarrassingly practice my signature. This is what I'm gonna put on. This will be my card signature. This will be my ball signature. And then all my dreams were crushed.
Did you practice awesome. Giving some sort of, because there's awards in the NBA, right? Did you practice your acceptance speech for MVP?
No, I wasn't that delusional. I wasn't going to be MVP. I was just going to be a 5-time All-Star. I don't know.
Just sixth man of the year or something,
just one of those little things where they're like, oh yeah, he's a pretty good player, right? Yeah, for sure.
Nothing too aggressive.
No. I love that. That's great. All right, I'm going to ask all of us. So Chad, you go next. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh man, what did I want to be? I remember that I wanted to be an airline pilot. But my mom says that my answer was always, I wanted to be a grocery stalker. That was my go-to.
Nice.
I think I probably saw them using those lifts or something in the store and putting stuff up high on the shelves. And so
we saw them stocking candy and you're like, oh my God, they have access to boxes of candy.
Look at all the candy they get to touch every day. I actually realized my dream very early, and I worked at Pick and Save in high school and stocked the dairy department. So
I love it.
So this was your retirement career?
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that I think this is valid because my retirement dream job is to work at Trader Joe's if, I'm physically able to. Everyone seems so happy there. So I think it's a good goal.
Hey, when we went and volunteered at Feeding America not that long ago, there's something soothing about being able to just kind of turn your brain off in a way, and just we were packing boxes of food, and something satisfying about making all of the things fit nicely in the box and then sealing it up.
Yeah,
so I could do that. I could do that in retirement.
Mindless task.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think mine was, I for sure remember wanting to be an art teacher. And I remember wanting to be I think I'm creative. I think I realized that I'm creative, but I'm not actually good with painting and drawing. I'm okay, sure, but not super skilled. That's what I thought I wanted to be. Yes, definitely. And then I also thought I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Yeah, I think that's pretty standard.
Yeah, I know
my daughter's Girl Scout troop. all of them. They want to like anything that's like, let's go to the Humane Society, or oh, I want to be a vet. It's all animals.
Yep.
Yeah, there was career day at Eliza's school, and she went as a not a vet, but she went as an animal, like a dog shelter rescue worker. So,
Aw,
Oh,
that's so
super-
cute.
like usually I think that's like a volunteer role, but it's okay. That's what you want to do.
Well, she could volunteer for that one day.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now that we've got that icebreaker out of the way, we can dive into the hard-hitting questions. So one of the things that we get asked very often, typically in like the sales process, is how we at Top Floor measure success with our digital marketing. What does success look like? How to calculate ROI? And I think that's really timely right now, just as we're heading into the new year. And that's the question we're getting is, how do I evaluate marketing, and how do I prove to kind of my stakeholders that going in a specific direction is a good idea? So Justin, you kind of created a lot of content around this lately on the Top Floor blog that covers the basics of this. So to start off, I just want to ask kind of at a high level, what in your eyes needs to be tracked to get a basic understanding of your digital marketing ROI?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, aside from everything, I'm a big tracker, but I think the biggest thing first and foremost is the leads that you generate from marketing. And I don't just mean like the total number of form submissions or calls that you got, but actually tracking the details, who they were, what they were looking for, if possible, what source it came from. Was it organic search? Was it a paid ad? Was it social media? Because then you're going to be able to then have your sales team go through and actually qualify those, be able to say, okay, this was like, I call them sales qualified leads. Like, obviously this is, somebody who's our target market. They've got the budget to do these things. It's a valid project. Or there's others that I kind of call marketing qualified leads, which are maybe still in the right realm, but maybe it's not the right audience, or maybe they don't have the budget to do it, but it is still your product, or it is still your service. And then obviously there's always the spam stuff. So you want to kind of clean all that stuff up, but tracking those. And then from there, take it a step further, track the actual dollars that are generated from those sales, or from those leads, excuse me. Because then at least at a kind of immediate level, okay, what kind of return was there for these leads that we generated. You can also calculate your close rate. How many leads do I need to get in order to get one sale? Everybody wants to know that as well. But aside from revenue, I think one thing too that people should look at to really get a good sense of the value of a lead that's generated is take a look at your actual company's customer lifetime value. Especially with a lot of the clients that we work with, it's a lot of manufacturing, a lot of industrial clients, where typically if they get a customer, it's someone that they're going to work with for years to come. So that initial sale or that initial project is kind of just a gateway to a lot more. So I think if you just kind of narrowly look at, well, what did I generate from this lead directly? I think you miss the bigger picture of, well, yes, but now I have an opportunity to work with this client for years to come, and it's really worth 4 or 5 times more than that. And then one thing I think a lot of people don't look at is then actually like gross margin. So like when you talk about ROI, it's your actual return on your investment. It's the profit that you make from it. So revenue is great, and I'm all for it. And especially if you're tracking something like customer lifetime value, I'm willing to spend a little more to get those types of clients if I have got a very high lifetime value. But if I spend $10 to make $10, I haven't really done much. So you got to be able to take a look at, okay, well, how profitable are we as a company to produce the products, the services that are coming in, so that you can actually start to see, okay, what is the actual return? How much am I actually putting in our pocket every time I make a sale?
Sure. Makes sense. So where would you recommend
Sounds easy.
Yeah, no,
super easy.
Simple. Where would you recommend like starting to gather some of that data?
Yeah, I mean, if your company or your sales team in particular is using any kind of customer relationship management tool, CRM, things like Salesforce, or even things like HubSpot, Copper, there's a million of them out there. If they're using a tool to track that, see if there's a way that you can get your marketing leads tracked in there as well. Start that funnel early, so that you can tie those leads directly to sales. If for some reason you don't have a system like that and you aren't tracking anything, I just like a spreadsheet. Just export any form submissions that you get. Make sure that your team is logging calls in there as well, and then track those fields so that you can say, okay, this was a qualified lead. Here's how much revenue was generated from it. Just basically get started anywhere is better than having nothing.
Yeah. I think you hit on a key point there too with just like the marketing leads, because I found that with many of our clients, I mean, it is a long buying decision, a long funnel. So keeping tabs on those marketing leads, even if they just engaged because they downloaded a case study or a piece of content, knowing that early on and kind of keeping track of how they're engaging with you can help you move them further down the funnel and hopefully turn into a sales qualified lead.
Agreed.
So whether it's through spreadsheets or something else, yeah.
Yeah, and I know too, I mean, we were guilty of it at Top Floor for years. We used Salesforce at the time. Like, we'd only put something in Salesforce once it got to like the proposal level. And it's like, well, that doesn't give me any insight into, how many people did they need to talk to before we actually got a proposal at the door? Like I need that information as well. Or what happened to those leads that we generated? You kind of just hear like, I don't know. It just never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, you need a system to track it so that you can follow up with the team to say, okay, what happened with this? What communications went out? Should I put them in my marketing? Should I put them in some kind of drip campaign, or at least just our marketing email list so that I can stay in front of them? Something along those lines.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, one of the things that makes it easier these days, because back in the day when we were using Salesforce, like the automation side of it is so key, because otherwise it's only as good as the human, the sales rep that's actually going to go in and enter that information. And for sure, guilty of that myself at Top Floor, of just putting in opportunities when they come up versus, actual like leads or things as they come in, because I don't know, lazy.
The admin side of things is always tough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the more you can automate it, which, I mean, there's a million services out there and ways to do that a lot easier, the better off you can be.
Definitely. Yeah. I think especially for tracking that like engagement over time, if you can have that automated versus every single download, you have to go into that lead, make sure it's noted somewhere that they downloaded this, then they went to this event. Yeah. It takes a lot of time to go through that manual effort.
Right. And there's no system is perfect, right? No tracking is perfect. So there's always going to be the need to have the human element of, kind of the sniff test on those leads. Like, is it actually a lead? Is it not actually a lead? Like, what does it look like? But if you can automate the engagement of that lead or prospect through your different marketing channels and sales tactics and all that sort of stuff, then it definitely helps lighten the workload for sure.
Yeah, I think you hit on something there too. Is there's a perfect way to track everything, and then I think what a lot of people run into is then they kind of just throw their hands up, like, well, I can't do all that,
right?
So I'm just not going to. But I think you need to force yourself to just track the basics, even if it's just, here's the lead, here's a proposal that got put out, and did it close, yes or no? Like, as long as you can start there, then you can start to look at, okay, well, this is the particular product or service they were offering, or this was the source of the lead, or here's how many like touch point. Like, there's always things you can add on, but you need to start at that kind of base level of just, I'm tracking leads as they come in, and did they become sales?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And especially with a lot of our client base, they don't have the luxury of having a CRM a lot of the times, or maybe it's an old, like, antiquated, system that they're using, or it's bolted onto their old ERP or something. So I know we've talked about that a lot before. Like, even if it's just as simple as like add an extra field in the back end of your website on your, WordPress contact forms and, and Gravity forms or something, and just mark those as like, yes, this sold, or no, this didn't sell, and here was the value. Like, that can be immensely valuable, more than just not even looking at that stuff or paying attention to it.
Yeah, it kind of gets into, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but like the bottom line metrics versus just more like key performance indicators. And maybe the idea there is starting with understanding what those bottom line metrics are first, and then building with the KPIs.
Yeah.
But one question I wanted to ask you, Justin, is when we're going through the process of onboarding a client, what metrics are helpful to know ahead of time to help us kind of determine our success?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think for them to know the things I already talked about, things like close rates and average customer value, those kind of things. But if they have analytics on their site already, I mean, I'd love to know, what's the current, levels of traffic, what's the current conversion rates, how many leads does the website generate? because those give us a baseline, something to compare.
Mhm.
Once we start working with it, what kind of progress are we seeing? Are we building on what's there? I think too, then it's a little bit more, I guess, subjective. Is that the one where you kind of interpret it? Yeah.
Mhm.
Where are those leads quality leads? Because again, I mean, I've also talked to a bunch of people. It's like, yeah, well, we generate 10 forms a month, but they're all garbage. Like not a single quality thing comes through. Well, in that case, I don't necessarily need to increase leads. I need to increase the quality of what's coming through. So that helps
Right.
inform the strategy as well. So it's not just, hey, I need to get more of what I currently have because it's really working.
Right.
It's, I might even need to just ditch everything I'm doing right now because it's not yielding any positive results. So that's where, metrics should be a guide, and it shouldn't be an
Mhm.
end all like, well, this was down, so that's bad. Well,
Right.
again, I think it's no brainer, but if I could get you one $10,000 sale versus $5,000 sales, you'll take the one, right? So
Mhm.
it's quality, and that's feedback that we just need to have in that partnership with our clients. Is not just, we have the numbers, we have those types of metrics at a high level. You need to help us close that gap and say, okay, this is the quality of what came through. Here's the sales that came from it, and then let's
Mhm.
do more of that, or let's shift gears.
Yeah, definitely. Getting into kind of what metrics those are, can you talk through a little bit about what bottom line metrics are versus like KPIs?
Yeah, I mean, I call them a bottom line metrics, but it's essentially the stuff we kind of already talked about, the things that actually have an
Mhm.
impact on things like revenue and profitability. So yeah, that's your revenue generated, that's your gross margin percentage, that's your kind of lead based stuff.
Mhm.
And then also, I mean, the costs associated with it. So obviously, there's a cost to doing marketing, whether it's the hours of your team that's spent, it's the ad spend that you're paying to someone like Google or LinkedIn, or the an agency that you're partnering with. Like those all costs that go into and need to be factored into kind of the bottom line, right? And then
Mhm.
there's what I think a lot of marketers almost focus on to a fault, which are those key
Mhm.
performance indicators, things like
Mhm.
traffic, impressions, click-through rates, those types of things, conversion rates. Those are the kind of things that I think we kind of focus so heavily on sometimes. I know I've been guilty of it in the past, that I don't then look at kind of further down the funnel, because I kind of almost just
Right.
assumed, well, if I get you more traffic, that's going to be more leads. More leads is good, right?
Mhm.
But that's not always the case. So I think you need to be able to, those are, as the acronym suggests, those are indicators of success. But then you
Mhm.
need to then say, okay, traffic is down. Let me take another step forward. Is that negatively impacting the leads that I'm generating? Is it negatively impacting the quality of the leads that are coming through? Again, it just kind of raises the flag almost and says, hey, you need to look
Mhm.
into this more, necessarily than just saying like, no, this is bad, change what you're doing, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, it kind of leads into the like vanity metrics conversation a little bit, where it's when you focus too much on, I was going to mix up the quantitative data and too much on the numbers and just making sure that those are rising essentially, then you kind of get into that trap of like, well, then are you focusing enough on the qualitative, and are they solid leads? Do they fit your ICP? That kind of stuff. So, mhm. So I guess when is it good to look at KPIs, or what are some of
Mhm.
the most common KPIs that you would look at to determine success?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. KPIs, again, we're talking kind of the metrics that lead to hopefully the bottom line stuff. Those I'd probably look at on a monthly basis. I mean, it just makes sense.
Mhm.
And you definitely want to look at them from a trend standpoint. Like just a number, a number in isolation doesn't really do much. But if you can compare it to the previous year or the previous month, if there's a specific thing that you're working on, you can kind of see, am I trending in the right direction? And I think the two biggest metrics for me, that I always look at first are traffic and conversion rates. So if I've got, and you kind of need to look at those two things together, because if you've got
Mhm.
traffic increasing, again, at a high level, good. But if your conversion rate is decreasing, you might actually be losing out on closing new business, right? Similarly, if your traffic is going down or declining slightly, but you're able to really improve those conversion rates, you might actually be more successful at generating leads and generating new business. So those two things I kind of look at together. Obviously, you'd want both to trend in
Mhm.
the positive direction, but one number or one metric on its own doesn't tell a full story. So you kind of need to know how these metrics interact with one another. If you take it a step further back, looking at things, especially if you're running ad campaigns, things like impressions and clicks and click-through rates. Those can all be indications of, am I in the right market? Am I getting in front of enough people? The click-through rate can tell you, is my messaging valid to those people that are searching? Like, does it entice them to click onto my ad, or are they ignoring it and moving on? So there's a lot of kind of, further up this funnel, for lack of a better term, further up the funnel type metrics that you still need to definitely pay attention to, but you need to make sure that they are, again, still feeding that funnel, still working towards the ultimate goal, which is getting some more sales.
Yeah, I was just thinking about too, like social media, obviously, like organic social media. I think sometimes people get caught up in like, okay, am I gaining followers? Am I getting more impressions, or are more people seeing what I'm putting out there? But like you said, that's not the full story. Are they actually clicking through on what you're putting out there? Are they actually reading the content on your website? Are they performing some kind of additional action that tells you that they're actually interested in what you're putting out there?
And is the sentiment positive? Like, great that they're commenting, but if they're just, to use the term the kids use, if they're just dunking on you, then that's not great. You want them to agree with you, to engage with you, and you want to engage back with them. Like, that's the qualitative piece that goes beyond just like, oh yeah, I gained 15 followers and got X amount of impressions. Well, great, but how are they engaging with you? How are you activating them?
Really. So how do you put these metrics to good use, Justin? What do you
do with all this?
So what do you do with all this information?
Oh boy. Where to start? Well, I think it's probably best to look at it from a time frame standpoint. So if we're just talking like on a month-to-month basis, I'm looking at KPI. It really is just to validate that what I'm doing is working. Am I getting kind of the desired outcome? I think one big piece of strategy is you should have some kind of goal in mind. I'm going to do this particular task, and from that task, I hope to achieve X. Even if it's just kind of in your head, you think, okay, if I do this, I'm going to get more traffic, or if I do this, I'm going to improve conversion rates on this page. You can kind of track, all right, am I moving in the right direction? Then I think at the quarterly level, that's when you really kind of have to say, all right, yes, track the trend, but that's the point where you need to make the decision, okay, do I need to change my strategy? Because that could be a larger problem. Maybe I'm disconnecting from my audience more, or this product doesn't really mix with this market. Maybe I need to make some changes on who I'm targeting. And then obviously at the yearly level, that's when you're really kind of putting everything together. Yes, you want to do the look back to benchmark, what was the revenue that was generated? Has my lifetime value changed? Has my gross margin changed? To kind of reassess and benchmark all of those metrics. But then that's when you're looking forward to say, okay, what changes have there been in the industry? And then how can I make sure that I don't negatively impact some of these bottom line metrics with some of the tactics that I'm making, or tactics I'm doing at the strategy level?
So I want to talk a little bit about just kind of attribution. And there was something that you had written in, I think, your first blog, like a few disclaimers related to attribution. And the first one is just that it's not necessarily useful to only track the performance of one channel, like SEO, for example, like only looking at that and those metrics to determine like your full digital marketing ROI. So could you talk, I guess, a little bit more about that?
And then also, you nailed it.
Oh, okay.
No, I think so. So when I talk about benchmarking, the value you get from a lead, I want to try to do that at a holistic level. So make it as simple as possible. I got X amount of leads, I got X amount of sales out of it, right? And then when you have that benchmark, then you can start to dive into specific channels to say, okay, which channels are kind of outperforming the others. And that's not necessarily to say, well, this one's lagging behind, so I'm going to cut it and I'm not going to do it anymore. But it does let you identify, okay, these are my moneymaker channels. These are the ones that I can consistently, I can bank on them, not only getting me a high volume of leads, but good quality of leads. But then you might need to dig into some of those other channels to say, okay, maybe the quality is really high here, even though I'm getting a low volume from it. Again, it goes back to that, this metric kind of just raises a flag and says, hey, you need to look into me a little bit more, as opposed to, no, this metric is bad, cut it and run. Like there's a point you get with that, but that's after you do that investigation. Yeah, and then I think the other piece too is understanding that different channels have different purposes. So I think something like social media is really great for getting in front of an audience, getting your brand out there. establishing yourself as a thought leader, establishing yourself as just even being active in a particular community. And it's really tough to put a dollar value on that, right? Like you need to be able to say, all right, I know I'm not going to necessarily generate as many leads from this channel, but it is vital for me to show that I'm active. I know what I'm talking about. I'm able to target particular people, and I might not, again, get them to convert at this point. But when they do a Google search, they see our company, they're like, I remember that guy. He's, works at this company, and I really like the stuff he's putting out. Hint, hint, lot of stuff I'm putting out. But that's kind of something that you need to be able to, and if you have to quantify it, great, to say that's, this brand impressions that's worth a certain amount of dollars to me. That's great. But I think as long as you kind of just make that note of like, yes, this channel is my lead generation channel, and that's really kind of all I really want to focus on with it. And this one's kind of more of maybe a thought leadership or brand awareness type channel, so that you're not comparing a brand awareness channel using a lead generation metric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the other thing, and this is also something you wrote about, is just how everything sort of blends together. So like you said, like your social media you're not doing that with necessarily the intent of I'm going to convert those viewers into a high quality lead, but over time that could then lead to a more serious conversation for a marketing qualified lead. And I think one of the cool things about like Google Analytics 4 these days is that it kind of like looks at those channels and how they may be attributed to the lead that might look on the surface like it came from a PPC ad or SEO. But then when you investigate further, they went to or looked at your LinkedIn page 5 times, and kind of shows you more of that full picture and more of the journey, which I think is really awesome.
Yeah. And I think, all marketing kind of works off of each other. I mean, it's very rare these days in particular that someone just does one single Google search, clicks on an ad, fills out a form. Right. I'm not saying it never happens, but when I started in this industry, it was very common that, someone just kind of trusted what Google put out there. The first link is going to be the best one. I'm going to click it, and then that's what I'm working with. I think these days there's a lot more research that goes in. They might check out your social presence. They might check out reviews of you and your products and people working with you. So there's just a lot of touch points and things to be aware of that it's really tough to attribute. So what I say, the first step you got to do is you kind of have to just choose a method. I like, if you want to do just solid attribution, this channel led to this lead. I like last touch. I'm like, yes, you got in front of them with this channel, but they didn't convert until they saw you on this channel. And as long as you do that consistently, I think it's going to help your reporting. It's going to help your marketing decisions. Then if you say, okay, well, I need to make an exception for this one because I know that was a lead that, Chad talked to them at this event. So that's why they know us. I think that's it's a ton of work and it's kind of a headache. And B, it just muddies the waters. And then it's like, well, now the rest of my metrics are kind of meaningless because we're making all these exceptions all over the place. I do like what Google,
super long sales cycles. Sorry to cut you off there, but like, I mean, if I talked to someone at an event last year, what the chances that closing this year had anything to do with me talking to that person at an event last year is very unlikely.
Very low. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, even that talk, then you kind of get them into a funnel and it's like, okay, well, was it the email that I sent them afterwards that did it? Was it the fact that, I connected with them on LinkedIn and now they're engaging with my content there? Was that it? Or was it the fact that they did a Google search and saw, they do what I'm looking for. Let me click on them and fill out a form. I don't know. Right. I just like that last touch. And I do like what Google Analytics is doing with that kind of multi-channel attribution, because it does help you visualize that to a degree. But I think from a lead generation and kind of a reporting standpoint, from an ROI, like you kind of need, it's not helpful to say I got 6.94 leads from social media. Like I got 6 or I got 7, because then I can say, okay, that was this lead, that was this revenue generated from it. But it does, again, help kind of visualize, especially if people are skeptical about it. It's like, we got to stay on social media because it's engaging with an audience. And then you have a report that shows, yes, they closed from an organic search or they closed from a paid ad, but here's all the stuff they did with social media in between that. And, the different things that we got them to click through to our blog topics, or we got them to click through to a case study that we just completed, or a white paper that we published that we promoted on LinkedIn. So that helps, I think, make the case that, like, yes, this isn't a lead generation channel, but it's worth the investment. It's worth the time.
Yeah. I think you brought up a good case too for why it is still important to know what that final touch point is and what that final push was to actually lead to a conversion. Because I think that can then help you understand your strategy going forward and what channels then to invest in. So like if it is SEO, for example, and that's where you're getting most of your leads, making sure you continue to rank for the terms that you rank well for and looking for opportunities to find new keyword targets to rank for, new content to put out there. So I think that's a really good point because that can kind of direct you then towards what channels are worth your time.
Absolutely.
Another question related to attribution that I know has actually come up recently with some of our clients is attributing, like, outside of digital marketing stuff, them back to the website. So I think the specific example was like mailers, like, and there was sort of like a guess out there of like, we think that these mailers are bringing this traffic to the website. How would you like recommend, I guess, attributing those more like traditional marketing efforts back?
Yeah. So I think at a high level, what I'd recommend doing is just making sure that you're aware of those activities occurring. So like in the event of a mailer, I know that we mailed them out on the 13th. So then for the next maybe 7 to 10 days, I'm just going to monitor traffic and see if I see any fluctuations based on, previous numbers, is it trending in the right direction? At a high level, you can do that. So definitely make sure that you're annotating those types of things, like events that you're at, or speaking engagements, or maybe you're talking on a podcast, something like that that's kind of happening outside of your normal marketing channels, so that you can be aware of those just little fluctuations that you see. The other thing you can do is digitize it as much as possible. So if you are sending out a mailer, put a link on there that says like, hey, go to company.com/ discount, or whatever the mailer is about, something quick and easy to remember. Don't put this long URL that you're going to expect them to type. It's got to be like a nice little short one. But then you'll be able to use something like analytics to be able to track, okay, what was the traffic to this, and make sure that you only use that URL on that particular mailer. Because if you start to put it on billboards and magazine ads, if you put that same URL everywhere, then again, it just muddies everything. So use unique URLs, digitize as much as possible. QR codes are really effective too at that, to try to control it as much as possible. But it doesn't stop people from just saying, oh, I saw this from this company, let me Google them and learn a little bit about them. Like, you're not going to be able to capture that specifically. But the more you can digitize, the more you can kind of control the path, the better you're going to be at being able to measure the effectiveness of it.
Yeah, the QR codes work really well, especially since then you can customize the URL. So if you wanted to include like UTM codes, so you can get really specific with the campaign or the source and that kind of stuff, you can get all that data too.
Yeah, that's one of the things you can do with those vanity URLs as well, is have those redirect to the page.
Do both. Do a vanity URL, QR code that leads you to that URL, and just throw up a quick landing page at / right off of the root domain / whatever that promotion's about / careers or / something.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So last topic that I wanted to cover is just overcoming challenges. I think attribution and ROI is probably one of the most headache-inducing processes for a lot of our clients. What do you see? And I mean, I know because I read your blog, but what do you see are the biggest challenges that marketers face when trying to attribute leads and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a technical standpoint, it's always going to be attribution. It's been attribution from day one of me working at Top Floor and to today. I mean, just being able to actually put a tag on something that says this came from my marketing activity is challenging. And I think the other piece too is that kind of goes hand in hand with that, is then just not tracking it after the sale. So I'm not saying everybody has to go out and invest in a CRM. Like I said, it can be as easy as a spreadsheet that everyone's got access to, and they can update their activities and whatever. Because if you don't know what happens after the form fill or after the phone call, how can you effectively choose your marketing strategy, right? You got to be able to say, this is working or this isn't working. I need to shift gears. And then that last challenge is, just getting the buy-in. So when it comes to something like attribution, and I mentioned, kind of just pick a model. So like if last touch is what you want to move forward with, then you need to get buy-in with the whole company to say, I realize that, Chad, you spoke to this person at this trade show, but they clicked on my email and they filled out a form. So to me, that's where that lead came from, was from our email marketing. Or and I know that you spoke at this event and you connected with all these people on LinkedIn, but they really didn't convert until they clicked on our paid search ad. So that's where I'm going to attribute this lead. You got to get that buy-in from the organization to say, like, we're not discounting and saying like, your activities were worthless. We're just going to say that for tracking purposes, for budgeting reasons, we're going to attribute the last touch. And then you got to get them to agree to it, because if they aren't, then they'll just write off your report. So you're going to talk to them and you see their eyes glaze over, or they're going to roll their eyes and say, yeah, whatever, marketer. You got to get buy-in from the organization. And I think the best way to do that is to show some progress. So start simple, to just say, okay, these are the leads the website generated. These are the sales that came from it. And you say, like, this is the power of the reporting I can give you if I can get some additional buy-in from the team.
Yeah. I think the emphasis on, I guess, going back to the bottom line metrics that you had pointed out, is going to be important for getting that buy-in, because they're not going to really care about like the traffic or the keyword rankings, or they're going to care about conversion rate. Like, are we getting the leads? So that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I care about things like traffic when leads are good. When leads are bad, I couldn't care less about traffic. I want to know, where am I getting the next sale from, right? So yeah, absolutely, you got to be able to tie your marketing metrics to some actual bottom line metrics, especially when you're talking to presidents, owners, CEOs. Like, again, those metrics are great, and maybe their initiative is like, hey, I got to establish myself as a thought leader. Then okay, I need to talk about things like impressions and whatnot. But typically, it's just, I need to know kind of what is the return on this investment, and that boils down to new sales, new leads, new customers.
Yeah, I think stakeholders care a lot about leads, but then the other thing that you can look at too, and this is where I think we could do a whole nother episode, is competitors as well, and like share of voice and that kind of stuff. So if you can show that these tactics or these KPIs lead to some other bigger objective, like increased share of voice, those are also the kinds of metrics that you could then take to those stakeholders to make your case.
Absolutely. Everyone loves getting a leg up on a competitor. You can respect them, but you want to beat them, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, so the last question I have, which you kind of touched on already, is just, how often you need to look at this stuff. So I guess starting with like ROI, when is it a good time to evaluate that?
Yeah, I think those bottom line metrics, again, as benchmarks, I'd say once a year is plenty. Like, you don't need to, on a monthly basis, update your customer lifetime value or your gross margin percentage. I think once you benchmark it, use that metric for the following year, and then go back and validate. Like, did I see a big swing? Like, are we all of a sudden selling at a much lower volume, or maybe at a much lower price point? Like, did anything change? I doubt anything would happen so drastically that you'd need to make that change mid-year. So I'd say those metrics benchmark at a yearly basis, and then KPIs, I'd take a look at those on a monthly basis, and then evaluate your strategy. So monthly, you evaluate your tactics. Is what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis having an impact and working towards my greater goals? And then quarterly, or maybe semi-annually, that's when you actually take a look at the strategy. So like, all these tactics were serving this particular purpose. Am I seeing the needle move on that purpose, and is that leading to more business? Because maybe you might move the needle as far as like a high level initiative, but it's not leading to more sales. So you might need to change that whole strategy. So that might be something you look at probably every 6 months, maybe three if you're really, really seeing things hit the fan.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction. Like, tactics kind of equate to your KPIs, whereas like your overarching strategy is going to more so attribute to, are you actually generating the big picture results that you want to see, the leads, the sales, etc.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, those are all the questions I have for you today, Justin. Unless there's anything else, Chad, you wanted to ask, but that was very helpful, very insightful.
Yeah,
So
no, I didn't have anything else. It's a lot to think about. Appreciate it.
Yes. So if
Absolutely.
you are listening, you can find Justin's blogs on the Top Floor website, and there's a lot more detail covered in those as far as kind of the actual formulas and how to gather some of that data.
Some might say too much
track
detail.
down. You know what? There's never too much.
No.
It's long, but you can skim.
Yep, definitely. So definitely check that out. And yeah, that's all we have. So thank you again, Justin,
Thanks,
and
Justin.
we'll see you
Yeah,
next
thank
time.
you.
All right, bye.
Bye.